Welcome to the Voices of Manufacturing with your hosts, Brian Salee and Michael Mullenberg, where business leaders across the industry share their unique challenges and insights.
It's almost like magic because it takes the learning process sometimes from weeks down to days, sometimes hours.
We want to help people within manufacturing and make them excited to come to work every day and go home safe to their family.
When you bring people in, they're anything but a machine. They're partners that can help you build your business, that can be your success if you treat them right.
And then you start having employees saying, when are you doing my machine? When are you going to come over here to my department? And now you get this buy-in.
This podcast is brought to you by Dazuki, the premier frontline digital transformation solution that allows manufacturers to standardize operations.
Michael, we've got a great guest lined up for today. But before we dig in, I want to get your thoughts. You've always enlightened me in this area of engagement and how to engage employees. And it seems like there's a trend, and I think it kind of ties back to some of the things you've brought up in the past about the shifting workforce. We're trying to retain employees. How do you retain employees? Engagement seems to be one of those tools. But I'm curious, from your time at 3M, what did it mean for the organization to engage employees? How did you guys do that?
Well, a couple different things that were really at the center of that was our daily management system, some people call them tier management or huddles. We worked hard. I won't say we ever perfected it, but we were always seeking to make that an effective gathering of the minds, sharing information, having conversations, talking about safety. And that was really a key system. I think the other aspect was lean engineers, process engineers, directors, managers getting out to the shop floor. And I won't say we did formal Gemba walks by the book, but it was sort of like, tell me what's going on today. Tell me about your work. Show me an example of an improvement. And every time we did that, I think it multiplied this cultural aspect of what we were trying to do, just that interaction in a real genuine, a genuine form. I don't use the word engagement anymore. I think that's a little cliche. It kind of bothers me. I've shifted to using the word commitment. I wanted committed employees, not necessarily engaged employees. And once I started thinking about that, it really changed my approach with every opportunity to meet with somebody. I'm looking for that commitment. Are they committed to the company, to their job, to excellence, to safety? And so that's the filter that I put on it as well. So I'm excited to talk to John about this because I know he's really passionate around this topic and has some stories to share with us. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Great. Yeah. Well, we're gonna take it up a level. And before we jump into the conversation, I'd like to introduce John Keiper to the show. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. And I've had a previous conversation with John around this topic. And so I'm really excited about it. But before we dig into that, John, I was hoping you could give us a little bit of a background on what you do currently in manufacturing, what company you work for.
Yeah. So I have been doing continuous improvement for the last 15 years. I am an industrial engineer by undergraduate degree, and I have my master's in science and lean manufacturing as well. And I have a lot of experiential learning just through, I think we talked a little bit offline too, successes, but more learning through failures and especially around engagement or, as you said, Michael, commitment. I really like that a lot. But my story has been, I've progressed from engineering into more of a specific continuous improvement engineer and then progress up to continuous improvement manager. And in my current role, I co-lead the performance excellence group. I work for a powder metal company and we make powder metal engineering solutions for a wide area of different markets. We do 25% of our customers live in the outdoor power space, 25% are in automotive, and then 25% are in off highway. And then the rest are in a mix of other different miscellaneous fields. But at the end of the day, we have 1,000 employees across 8 sites that we're trying to engage, that we're trying to say, hey, we don't want you to check your brain with your time card at the door. How do we get you thinking and being involved in a part of this company, this family, and this amazing organization and what we're trying to do? I've had a chance to do some things in operations. So I know the operations side as an operations manager, as an interim general manager, and the challenges that faces to find room to do continuous improvement and find room to engage employees during stressful times. But I keep coming back to this. I love to do the most. You know, I get the most probably frustration and the most enjoyment out of it. So it's probably a good measure that it's something I'm passionate about. But and it spills over. I loved in one of the previous podcasts, in a lot of your previous podcasts, you hear different speakers talk about how it spills over into their personal life, and I can say that too. And in fact, for anyone listening out there, if you think that doing a date night with your wife is a good idea, building leadership standard work as a couple, it might sound good on paper, but it was a disaster. So don't do that if you're looking for a fun date night.
Well, John, I'm curious. You mentioned really driving performance, right? Continuous improvement. What, when we think about driving performance, especially on the front line, what are some of those knobs that you can turn to drive performance?
One of the things so much about performance is obviously um, setting clear targets. And, you guys have talked about this a lot. And then having clear metrics on how we're doing that, and then empowering the person at the closest level of work to basically fit the process or improve the process in order to not only get back on target, but to take it to that next level, right? So, um, if you think about performance as a minimum line, right? We talk on so much, how do we maintain that line, but then how do we also, move that line to the next level? But really, it always comes down to me, we're always going to be people, and we're always people going to be doing the work. Although maybe the new artificial intelligence, we'll see how that changes in the future. But for now, at least I can say. And so, really comes down to how are you engaging that person's whole person, not just their skill set, but their mind and their whole attitude. How do you get that person involved in making a difference? And that I see that resonate in my own life when I feel like I'm the most engaged and improving my own performance the most. And I feel like that really resonates with what I've seen on the manufacturing floor as well, and in the office area.
I'm curious, you talk about bringing your whole self to work, I guess is the phrase that I hear a lot, and it sounds great, but like practically, I think that's where a lot of companies probably struggle, right? Is like, I got these knobs. I was asking you about the knobs because I always think of, you've got pay, you've got status, right? You've got development opportunities. As Michael talked about, you can find ways to engage people to get them to participate more. But it seems like, and we've talked about this, there's a higher level of engagement to drive this performance. You mind digging into that a little bit? And what's the bigger purpose? I think you mentioned something like a cathedral model, was
Yes,
something
I
you
was
shared.
just going to bring that up. Do my lean training, not in academic, but just in experiential learning and some of the programs I went through. I got connected with just an amazing person named Frank Devine, and he actually has a model called the cathedral model, and it's about employee engagement. But it's called the cathedral model because this story that was told where one time, passerby came up and saw two bricklayers, building a cathedral. And they asked the first one, they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well," he's like, I'm laying brick for X 99 an hour and adding the mortar and laying the bricks and staggering and doing the structure." And he listened to his answer. And then he turned to the person who from the outside externally was doing the exact same work and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building the most beautiful structure I could ever build so that years from now, when I'm long gone, that generations, ahead of me will be able to enjoy this amazing place to worship and have a sense of awe and wonder as they approach life." And that concept of what I like to call maybe the visible and the invisible, I come back to so often that what you see external a lot of times has to be fed by what you can't see, being the internal. I don't know, or the visible and the invisible. It reminds me of early on in my career. And I was thinking about this in light of this. I was so excited when I was introduced to the lean tools, and they are great tools. There's a whole bunch of those things that you talked about, but they are all the visible part of lean or employee commitment, right? Or employee engagement. But if you don't understand the invisible aspect, the reason or the purpose why, you can do a lot of damage, not even understanding that. And it reminds me of a story, and maybe it's a good place to start as well, where found out this new idea of a visual, we called it a primary visual display, or, a visual board where, you'd be able to go into an area and you'd be able to see the team's performance as it related to safety, quality delivery. You could see their state of work posted. And this was in the mid 2000s. And I was so excited to see, and we had a forging line. And I said, I'm going to build one of these things and I'm going to introduce the team and we're going to use this as a form of engagement. And so I had this great 4x8 board and I mounted it, I painted it. I had some beautiful holders to put metrics on. And the thing I was the most proud of as a new continuous engineer was they had quality checks, but they were not, the frequency was based upon the results of the previous check. And this was before Industry 4.0. So there was no easy way to digitize this, at least not cheaply, right? So I thought, how am I going to show what the last couple of results were and make this so people could see? We would say 10 feet, 10 seconds. Right? I want to be able to come up to an area and, within 10 feet of it, within 10 seconds, I want to know, is there a problem? Because then I know I'm spending my time solving problems, not finding them. So I thought, I did a whole bunch of research. I thought this was super creative, but I found this cup lid holder. Like you would go into McDonald's, they had those lid dispensers. And it was a perfect size that you could fit these McDonald play balls, right? So I don't know if you can picture, you have a flat comes at the bottom and you could put these play balls and they would stack in. And I found online where I could buy red, yellow, and green plastic McDonald play ball. I thought, this is awesome. And I built a little clock there. And I would say, you just put if it's a red finding, you put a red ball in and that triggered that you got to do one more frequently, yellow, green. That is perfect. You can see the last couple of results. It's very visual. Everything we want in 10 feet, 10 seconds. And because it was a disaster, I could not get anybody to engage. I fought not only with the people on the floor trying to get it, I couldn't convince the supervisors to use it. And the most embarrassing thing was I was mocked for these like child play balls, and we'd find them everywhere in the plant. We'd find them in the bathrooms, you'd find them in the rivers, and it was such a humbling experience. And I remember finally saying, "What went wrong? What did I do?" And it wasn't until a long time afterwards, embarrassing to say that I realized primary visual display was not meant. It's not meant for management. It's to be used by management, right? I never learned the invisible, right? That it's meant for their own team to build the tools they need so that they can see their process, that they can improve, that they can measure themselves and be fully engaged and align with the organization. And when I finally realized that, I thought, I did it to them and not with them. And so much I think of the lean tools that we've launched over the years, I think some have been really successful, but I think some have maybe done damage because we haven't taken time to really say, what's the purpose of this? Or what am I really trying to get out of this tool? And am I approaching it the correct way?
That's a great example. And I think, I always go back to your cathedral model because, when you shared that with me, that was the first time I had heard that. And it really clicked for me. And then I recalled several examples of companies I've seen that do this well. And there's one example, there's a company that manufactures airbags. I believe they're out of Arizona. And they have a dashboard in the factory that says the number of lives saved by their airbag deployments. And I just thought, wow, that's a great way to engage the employee because every day they're seeing that and they're remembering, just like you said, they can't see when the airbag deploys and saves someone's life, but that dashboard represents, hey, the work that you do here has a huge impact that you can't see. And, not every company has a product that the outcome could be represented on a dashboard like that, but there's other ways to engage, it sounds like. And I think that's, what I'd love to dig in deeper on with you here as we talk about how do you get that type of engagement to where it is more meaningful than just the work that's being done today.
Yeah, that's a great example. And yeah, talk about, how much pride would you be at the dinner table saying, my work literally saves lives, right? I'm building
Yeah.
things that are saving people's lives. I've seen it done where maybe if you can't connect it that quickly. Sometimes though, I've seen where you still say, okay, we're making this widget, but this widget goes into all of the vehicle platforms, in the automotive. Does anyone drive these? And you put big pictures up of that, and so somehow connecting it downstream into where it finally goes. That's an excellent. I like that a lot. That would be can imagine how powerful that would be to be that.
Well, Brian, that's one of the companies that is associated with the Shingo Institute. They won the Shingo Prize. Yeah, they're all actually out in Salt Lake City. It's Autoliv, and they that is their company motto. That's their mantra. Is we save lives. Another company in the area has a similar one. They don't save lives, but they say we improve lives. And so all their technology, their products, their components, John, as you said, they don't really see the end result of the product, but they see the result of the impact. And so if you say to any one of the employees, what are you doing today? They're saying, well, I'm improving lives or I'm saving lives. And that's a lot different than them reciting something like I'm being innovative or I'm hitting a cost target. Or, I mean, to be frank, even applying science to life, the 3M mantra, it's inspiring at some level, but at the shop floor, it's hard to connect. So how do you get there? And then I think you were talking about some metrics, like even on the shop floor. Do you measure, rate, yield, safety incidences, or do you kind of let them develop a metric that's more meaningful to their work cell?
The slogans are basically how you connect, going back to the cathedral model, right? And really allowing that employee to connect to that bigger purpose. And, one thing I just maybe want to comment on that before going on to the other topic is um, I think so much, whoever designed that though was very deliberate and thought through that. And I think, I was thinking about practical aspect of that, and that's really important. One of the things that really hit me, uh, living in Pennsylvania, I don't live far from Frank Lloyd Wright's House of Falling Water. I don't know if you've seen pictures of this or heard of this, but uh, it's an amazing house where waterfall literally flows through the house, and um, it was made for a client who lived in the woods, and now it's part of a, whether it's a state park or an independent society where they offer tours. You can actually tour this house, but absolutely incredible. But what really hit me was when I started looking into this and I visited it, there's a slogan in for architects, right? That says form follows function. And I thought of that so often, and I try and apply that so often back to life and especially to work, that the form follows function. What is the function of this? What is the purpose? What am I trying to achieve? And let that determine the form, right? And so often I think when we talk about what is the bigger purpose of what we're trying to connect to, but that also then can help when you talk about applying that to the specific metrics out on the shop floor, right? That can help you form what that looks like. If you're just trying to copy the Toyota system way or even the 3M way or any other way without actually really thinking about, does this fit my function, right? Does this form fit my function? You could be missing a bigger opportunity to going back to engaging that cathedral mindset of this is what we do, this is our purpose, and everything should be moving towards helping that.
Creating that alignment, that higher level purpose with those leading indicators, that are also meaningful, where the work is being done. Your comment, similar to the cathedral model, when you have that image in your head, it's hard not to pursue it. I think it was Derek Sievers of CD Baby that says once people know their purpose, they can't turn from it. They can't look away. They must pursue it. And I believe that. It took me a long time to say, well, maybe people are a little cynical and it's just a slogan. But the more I saw it in real life, I was like, no, people do align and it does motivate them to move forward. I think you're experiencing that as well.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite quotes is, and I want to bring it up because Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. He was a psychologist and he wrote a book basically and exploring, what motivates people, what's the meaning of life. And it is incredible when you think about it. He said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only the lack of meaning and purpose. And this is someone who suffered way more than I ever have or will. And to just hear him say, it all comes down to purpose. The circumstances you can bear, but it's not having that purpose. And I think that is so important that we're deliberate about setting that. And so that really resonates, Michael. I agree with that. Um, one of the other things that really, once you do know that purpose, it gets planted and it really spurs um, spurs the right type of activities. One of the training exercises I like to do when we do leadership training for small groups, we have a game we call Paper Stars. And it's so fun as a facilitator to do this. And what we say is, hey, you guys have 5 minutes to create 5 paper stars. And I'm the customer. I'm going to buy them. I can only buy from one of you. So give me the best presentation you have after that. And so you set a timer and you say go. But what they don't know is in front of them, they've all been giving an inside tip. Okay. And it says stuff like sharp stars are a safety hazard. Safety is very important. Please protect me as a customer. Or it'll say the bigger the stars, the better. Some might say smaller stars are better. Some will say, we love having uniformity. Some will say we want every star to be different, right? So at the end of the day, we do this sales pitch, and it's really funny because they're got to ham it up and they say why I should buy their paper stars. They're all different, all so different. And I ask them after, they say, why did you cut the corners off of your stars, or why did you make it this way? And inevitably, it all comes down to, well, I had a tip that this is what you wanted. And I said, oh, okay. So then we go through the whole thing, and I say, well, nobody asked me why I want these stars. And, so we joked, said, I want, these are throwing stars. I'm trying to get the farthest, most accurate throw I can get with these stars. And then I asked them, can you demonstrate the stars? And it's another, fun, just ice-breaking moment where we demonstrate that and we give out prizes. But when the fun settles and we sit back down, we reflect on, why did you behave in the way you did? And it's because you believe something, and that belief generated your behavior. Some of you really believe that, and you believe false things, right? But it didn't matter whether what you believed was true or false. It was true enough to you, and it motivated you to act in a certain way. And we talk about, as leaders, so important that we take time to define not our behaviors, our outputs. And sometimes we have to regulate behaviors because we can't, there's some great things we've done where you have to just say behavior. I don't care whether you believe in safety or not. You got to wear safety shoes. You got to wear your safety glasses. But to really be effective leaders, how do we think about our beliefs, and how do we really adapt a belief system that generates where we're trying to get to in our purpose? And so we always say there's a goal, and we have beliefs on how to get to that goal, but really thinking through those beliefs are important.
John, I want to, as we're talking here, you're talking about leaders, right? You got the leaders have to believe first, because it all trickles down, and they really have to believe. It can't just be, they're just repeating whatever the company purpose is. And so I'm curious, as we go back up to this higher level purpose for the company, like we mentioned, the airbag company does this really well, a little bit easier for them.
Right.
Other companies, you might make a product, you're making little plastic boxes, they're going to hold tools or something like that. Companies like that, where the end product and the purpose of the product might not be as impactful as the airbag company. What are some ways that you've seen companies create purpose at this higher level where there's real meaning behind the work you're doing? Employees can really feel it, and you can see it trickle down. We've all been part of organizations, I'm sure, hopefully, that there's a culture and you feel it, and people are continuing to emphasize the importance of the work they're doing because this is the outcome it's going to have. How do you create that? Like, what are some examples you've seen?
Yeah. Well, first, let me acknowledge your statement. And I agree wholeheartedly that the higher the senior level leadership thinking is, it is the most important as that steers the organization. Because of that, they have power and influence to steer more so than other layers of the organization. It's not that anyone's more important than the other, but that is their role, is to steer and to direct and directional purpose. And so I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that a lot of us find ourselves working in continuous improvement where we might be working for someone that doesn't necessarily believe that that's important to define a purpose, or, you're finding yourself under maybe some people that make it difficult. I acknowledge it. Currently, my management that I work with, I'm so grateful for, because they are very big on setting purpose and setting direction. I'm grateful, but I've definitely spent time also working where it's very difficult to align those beliefs. And one of the things that sometimes you can almost feel stuck or you feel like, oh, if I can't do it in a bigger scale, and what do I do? But I come back to you, and I think, and maybe this is where you're driving the practical side of it, Brian, but think all of us, no matter what level in the organization we are, we have a sphere of influence. And even though we might not be able to control kind of we all have an ability to start with the influence of people we have around us, right? And even all the way down to even if you don't have any direct reports, but you have colleagues that you're working in some type of a natural work team. And so I think to start there, I think maybe the first thing is maybe to think about the people that you're interacting the most, right? Maybe I would start with two things. I think the first thing is the people that I'm interacting with the most. How do I truly view them? Do I really view them as a nuisance, as a hazard to me, as they're slowing me down, as someone that I don't want to be around? And that's hard but I think you have to be honest and say, this is how I really view these people, my colleagues, right? And I think you need to somehow say, do I believe that they can add value? Do I believe that they're looking at things different than me? And that by looking at things differently, they could actually be beneficial to helping me achieve a collective goal, right? So I think it first starts with a little bit of soul searching, saying, do I really believe that the person next to me is equally validly, has good opinions and wants to problem solve and can contribute? Because we would talk about that with the teams to say, there's always that one person you joke around, you're like, whatever his name is, he's tripping over his own feet, they're always looking after him. But there's an underlying belief there that he really isn't, or she really isn't as valuable of a contributing member. And you almost have to be critical on yourself and humble enough to say, I got to change that attitude first. Right? I have to see them as truly value add because they're part of this team. But the second thing is, I think it really is to try and find purpose in specific job you're doing to the organizational goals. And if those goals aren't defined, then I think sometimes that makes it a little bit difficult, but I still think you can find purpose in the fact that we as people love to solve problems, right? As we get more digital 4.0 and we become less and less maybe of the cyclical work, right? We're always going to need us to solve problems. It's something that we engage in. And I think when people have ability to solve a problem and engage in problem solving, that is a level of deeper job satisfaction. So I think the other thing I would advise is maybe look for problems, right? That you can engage people around you and say, hey, I've been struggling with this. Do you have any ideas how we can fix this? And, if you start to look at both of those types of things, perhaps that's a way that you can start purposely moving towards commitment and engagement and just where you are, right? Wherever you are in the organization. If you are at that higher level of the organization, though, I think it's really important to really think about purpose. A lot of times strategy deployment is so important. I don't know if you've had anyone talk yet on Hoshin Connery. That would be a great future podcast. I'd love to hear some experts on that. Once you do have this vision, how do you deploy that throughout your organization so everyone can latch onto that and say, I see the purpose. I know how to get behind that.
John, and I think maybe I'm always a framework thinker. I like to try and build frameworks to break concepts down. And I see what you're saying here. You gave the example of the employee who doesn't have any direct reports, right? So that's like an employee to an employee relationship.
Right.
And then you've got the supervisor to employee, and then you've got the company to employee, right? Those are all different relationships, and each one of those parties can have an impact to drive engagement. And I've seen it done really well at the supervisor to employee level, the manager to employee level. I think employee to employee could be challenging, but we've all seen those like bright spots. But as we try to go back up to the higher level, the company to employee, like we know a lot of companies struggle with this. There's just not a lot. The purpose is to hit the number, or the purpose is, hey, what's our stock price today? Like the purpose is, it's not meaningful to that frontline employee. And I think that's I won't say a plague, but it is a very big problem in manufacturing. It's that whole cog mentality that, a lot of organizations have. Hey, you're going to come in, you're going to do this work, you're going to get it done, and we're going to pay you a check. And that's our relationship. And so what I really want to know is, and I know you have examples of this, is like, how does the company build, a more meaningful relationship with that employee to create more purpose? And I think you've given an example, in a previous conversation with you, I think you mentioned an example where the company was X% of profits, or they were donating to charities or something like that. There's like those 1%, things like that, where you're giving away, money to these charities. And so that can create purpose. But what are some of those examples that you've seen that are, for those companies that aren't the airbag company, that can have that direct tie to a meaningful outcome?
I can't wait to share a story with you on that. And I'm looking forward to that. But it's so funny, Brian, because what you said, I've noticed where during my first time as in operations, I would find, there's one employee where it was so hard to engage him. He was a very disgruntled employee, very difficult. And, um, just kind of a little bit of a belly full of the company, and just not someone that it was someone I actually did not enjoy having conversations with. And I remember I was shocked when I found out he was leading a whole Make-A-Wish chapter in our area. And he was fully engaged, fully recruiting people and doing some amazing things. And it was almost this aha moment to me of, how is this the same person? How is this person who very competent, an excellent leader, very engaged, is literally, not literally, sorry, figuratively checking his brain at the door. I can't get any extra effort out of him, just doing the bare minimum. And I start thinking, what is wrong here, right? Why are we in? But it goes back to this conversation of, how do we connect the things we're passionate for, right? The things our purpose for, to the work we do. And sometimes, and I like where you were going there, sometimes the work itself, sometimes maybe not as passionate as what we want to do, right? But we all of us in manufacturing have to have that done in a physical space, right? And that physical space lives in some type of a community. And so getting involved in your community, and especially, we can talk about even the organization moral responsibility to give back to that community. So it's such an important aspect to really helping people feel engaged. What the company I do now does an excellent job of doing this, and they do big things once a month. They do small things. One of the favorite things that I got involved with was my previous company. We had a CEO who, it was a British owned company, and he ended up getting involved with Bear Grylls. And for those that don't know, Bear Grylls is kind of the British version of our Navy SEALs, and he does like dream activities. And he was a motivational speaker once, and he partnered with our CEO and said, "Hey, we want to drive people getting involved in their community, giving back." And they did this huge, they called it Mission Everest, where their girls wanted to drive a powered hang glider above Mount Everest. And for every dollar that we were going to sponsor him, $1 for every dollar that was raised at the community level at all the different sites throughout the world. So if people gave their money or they gave their time through, you know, coaching Little League soccer or doing the Make-A-Wish Foundation, anything like that, they would be able to, basically talk about that, bring that into their workplace. And that was promoted and advertised. And as a result, that matched dollar for dollar. And it was just such a neat thing. And all the money that was raised collectively was then put towards a schooling project in Africa. But I got to be part of that, when they actually did the Mount Everest summit, I actually got to go out to Nepal and be part of that. But there was such an intense pride and ownership that after that summit, after all of the the flare died away, it continued on. It was called Hearts of Gold. And every month, every site would say, "Hey, this is what we're doing for our local people, our community." And I know a lot of plants do that now. I know that isn't unique. But that also is a really good way to connect sometimes people that, hey, you coming to work matters. It matters to your community. It matters to the people around you. Not only what you're doing here, but just in general, in a bigger picture. So I think that's another opportunity to really connect people to purpose.
Yeah, that's a great example, John. Are there, think about the opposite side of this. Are there any bad behaviors that you've seen or you've done yourself? I know I have, that are just purpose killers, culture killers. You just say, "Wow, I shouldn't have done it that way."
Yes. Immediately, the one I think of is, I think if you do it long enough and if you listen to the lean thinkers long enough, there is a humility that you need to approach life with, right? And work with. And I'm still guilty of this. And it's something I strive so hard to do. But I find so often when I bring my preconceived pride in or my preconceived ideas or my notions to a group, that I quench any type of creativity or any type of engagement. So often my pride or my preconceived ideas of what something should work or where I want to direct somebody can really ruin it. And, I loved a speaker you had on last time. I think it was Rodney from NASA. He was sounds like such an intelligent person, such a great interview with him. But one of the things that really resonated with him was he said when he went to NASA, one of the reasons he got in with NASA was because he would say, I don't know the answer to this, but I think we can work on it. And I'd love to work on it with you. And I think approaching a belief that I don't have all the answers and it's okay that I don't have the answers is such an important enabler to continuous improvement and building that level of engagement. And I think that's the hard one to practice, but a critical one that we have to practice as leaders.
That's such a valuable leadership quality. One, because if you don't have all the answers, right, you're almost asking for help, right? You're bringing people in.
Yeah.
That is one aspect to it. And then the other aspect to it is you're showing vulnerability, which I think we all know if you can show a little vulnerability as a leader, that can go a long ways in building those relationships with people.
Yeah. Well said.
John, as we kind of come to a close, I think we've talked a lot about purpose and we've kind of jumped around talking about engagement at the front line and how the company can drive engagement. And I'm curious, you've been part of several companies, when you do engagement really well, what are the outcomes that it drives? What are some of the things that, the characteristics of the company, the characteristics of the shop floor, what does it look like?
The benchmark for me was I remember I was working in Southern California at the time for an aerospace company. And I remember having the opportunity where they said, hey, there's a Toyota plant. It was a new meat plant. Unfortunately, it's closed down. It was a joint venture between GM and Toyota. And they said, hey, it's a 4-hour drive north, but if you want to, they have an opening. You can go in and take a tour. And they only let in, it was open to the public, but you could do these small groups. And I got it. And my manager at the time, who was in continuous improvement, said, definitely go up and check this out. And Ryan, I kid you not, I got done with that tour and I said, they must be paying these people. Everyone smiled. Everyone looked, I'm not trying to sell this as fake. Everyone has big life issues that they're dealing with. But in general, I honestly was suspicious of it. I thought, are they trying to put on a show at Toyota to show that there's a level of happiness, there's a level of engagement where people just seem to be genuinely happy to be there. And I remember that must have been back in 2004. But I remember seeing that and being so impressed by that and just realizing that, okay, maybe there is a better way to really engage people. And because where I was, that was not my reality of seeing people at work. But I have had a chance over the years, not always, but to be involved in pockets of that type of thing. And I see people genuinely loving, the people that they're working with, even though they're challenged and frustrated. But you do see call signs where they like coming to work. They like working on the hard challenges. I'm sure you've heard that and seen that in lots of different places. In high performing, I think, that's, the very thing that you're chasing after ends up, you get in the end, right? When you do have that engagement, the best training during the training of lean training that I got, they said, lean is all about the people. And it really is. I think if you engage people in the way you think about them and the way that you work with them, and they're engaged and contributing, that the results will flow from that simply because you've got an entire workforce of problem solvers that are helping to eliminate waste and maximize value flow. So it's really neat to be part of, but there truly is an intangible, there's an energy, there's an
Yeah.
electricity that when you go in there, you think, man, this is incredible. I want to be part of this.
Yeah. It's interesting when you see it, you just know there's something going on here that's different than other factories I've been to.
Yes.
Which, you go, where does that come from? And I got to imagine those frontline supervisors, those managers, right? Everything flows right from the top down a lot of times in terms of what's the attitude of the organization. How do we treat each other? All of that flows downward, which again goes back to our topic here of that purpose, the greater purpose for the organization is just so important. And maybe it's even, I'm not sure how else to think about it, but it's the personality of the organization almost that you're forming
Yeah,
through this purpose.
I like that. I think that's a great summary. Yeah, your personality, right? as a person, what makes us up. It's what we believe, right? It's the things that, that's important to you as an individual, as as a family member, as a bigger society member. It's you as a person. So the personality of the organization, I think, is a great summary of that.
John, as we come to a close here, I know you've got a really strong lean background, and I'm curious when it comes to what we're talking about today, which is creating this greater purpose, engaging employees, as well as some of the lean tools out there. What are some of the resources that you're using now to really continue to educate yourself and your colleagues?
I think there's an internal striving, and or internal maybe. Um, how would I phrase that? Um, I think there's some things that I like to continuously grow internally, and then kind of sharpen from the external as well. So, um, you know, one of the things I value so much is my current manager is very pro performance excellence and continuous improvement. He lives it, he breathes it, but he's also not afraid to challenge and constantly sharpen my beliefs. It's something I respect about him so much. I've told him there's times where sometimes it almost gets you flustered or angry to think, how could you say that? Or what are you challenging? But it's done with an attitude where he's really trying to help me improve and better. And, I would just say surround yourself. If you don't have somebody in your life right now that will um, challenge your beliefs and sharpen your beliefs and really help you work through that, not just someone that will nod and say nice things, but will really engage, seek that out because that's so important to growth as you continue to become better at these types of things. And then I think internally, I think there's some great books. I mean, so many smart people have written on this and I've learned so much. Please check out Frank Devine and his group, the Cathedral Model. It offers some excellent training on that. One my favorite book of all time, I have it right here in my office, is the Toyota Way Field book. I love that book because it's a truly practical way. And the idea of people-centric thinking is written throughout all of that. So as he introduces all of these tools, you really get an insight into the reason why. And so he did a great job marrying that visible with the invisible. So I would say find someone to really challenge you and pick up that book. The Toyota Way Field book is a must have.
And Frank Devine is the name of the author for the
Yes.
Cathedral
Yes.
model.
Yeah. It's Frank Devine and his group is called Accelerated Improvement.
Great. Well, John, we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this with us. I know this is one of those topics where it's a little bit loose. A lot of us have engineering backgrounds and tend to think very linearly. And this is one of those ones, though, really important and can be challenging to wrap your arms around. But I appreciate you coming in and sharing these insights today.
It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Voices of Manufacturing podcast with Brian Salee and Michael Mullenberg. This show is brought to you by Dazuki, the premier digital transformation solution that allows manufacturers to standardize operations. Our website, where you can listen to our episodes and find tons of helpful resources, is dazuki.com. Sign up for our monthly newsletter so you'll be the first to know about new episodes. That's dazuki.com, and join us in creating the frontline of the future.